Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello, Miss De La Rosa.
Hi.
Hello.
Hola, Miss De La Rosa.
Hi, how are you guys?
You good?
We're
You need
all
anything
good. How
from-
are you doing?
I am good.
Are you staying on top of everything?
I'm trying.
Well, we're all thinking about you.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for my card. Money. It says everybody. From everybody. Hello. We're gonna present it at public hearing. I'm gonna assign the minutes, but you're gonna get new minutes.
See, like the basketball analogy. It's written in there from our administration instead of Dr. Ramos. So just little things like that.
It'll just be at the public hearing. Yes.
I think she plans, yeah, she's sending it.
Here you go.
Stop listening to them.
Here, you need a pen?
Yeah. I have mine in there. Did you see that IG post about people at Disneyland? But they weren't in Disneyland, they were just outside Disneyland to see the fireworks.
Oh,
There was a ton of people, like nobody was in Disneyland, but they were freaking piled up outside.
Original ones that we had weeks ago that still need work. Or this is, I'm tired of hearing her voice.
I know, but that's the part. I'm glad I found it.
When is the time capsule for Dunbar?
So, both, yeah, we're actually talking about today, both Lowell and Dunbar.
At the same time?
Well, Lowell's turned 125, Dunbar is the same.
Dunbar.
Both springs, what would they? They're both 100.
But only Dunbar has the time capsule.
Dunbar.
Okay. Nice.
Ramos is making the theme of her shirt. They're designing a shirt this year for Lowell and all about that.
100 years? Oh, wow. Cool. Maybe we can do a time capsule over there.
Like one end,
Yeah.
yeah. That's not bad.
I'll throw in my iPod.
I have one too, it still works.
CDs that I can throw in the 90s.
Your No Doubt CDs.
Yeah. Throw in some Smash Mouth.
Coldplay.
Try and figure that out.
Oh my gosh.
We find it.
The Nelson brothers.
The Nelson brothers.
Thinking about them from the 90s.
Oh,
He's my age, right?
2024, 25.
about right now. So 24, 25.
Blood. Just kidding.
You need to explain that a little bit. Explain
Got-
more in depth.
That makes you an accomplice.
Yeah.
Abort, abort.
Yeah. I want you getting very summoned again. If it's me, you gotta recuse yourself, okay? If you get Jerry, you're like, I know her. She's guilty, I know her.
Oh,
She did it. Thanks. Thank you. All right. Here we go. Here we grow. Oh, look, I find it. Here we
That's not it.
grow.
I got that from Emerson. It's on their wall. Remember they had like that mural done? Yeah. I'll help read whatever.
That's not, nothing.
Trash.
Basura.
Yay.
Basura. Just kidding. That's what we're hearing today. July 9th. Hungry.
Not me.
What would you guys?
To Blanco.
Oh,
I was like, I've never been here before, but school year, cause we could park. Are you ready? Thank you. It is Tuesday, July 9th, and we will begin our Phoenix #1 Elementary School District Board meeting. It is 5:15, and I call this meeting to order. Moving on to our tribal land acknowledgement. In partnerships with the tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. May I get a roll call?
Good evening, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Here.
Ms. Regional Carrillo, Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Here.
Dr. Alicia Vink, and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have quorum and can begin the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, and liberty.
Okay, moving on to A5, the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Gonzalez, do we have any recommendations?
Madam President, I recommend we accept the agenda as it is presented.
Thank you. I motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa.
Aye.
And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to B1, where we will be holding a public hearing meeting. This is to receive the presentation of the fiscal year 2024-2025. And this public hearing is in compliance with ARS 15-905. This public hearing pursuant to ARS 15-1103 and 15-1107 will also serve as the requirement to give notice and hearing in order to apply any any litigation recovery, insurance proceeds, and condemnation recoveries to construct, acquire, improve, repair, or furnish school buildings. I pass it over to Ms. Mena.
Good evening, President Bueno, Governing Board, Cabinet, Community. Thank you for being here today to review the adopted budget. State statute requires that we approve our adopted budget no later than the 15th. I presented the proposed budget at the last meeting, and this is for transparency so that we can make sure that both the governing board and the community understand how we're spending our funds. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna go over is maintenance and operations. There's a decrease in regular operations funds. This is due to, we are anticipating a loss of approximately 175 students for the new fiscal year. We are also not going to see a carry forward like we did from fiscal year 24 to 25 because we utilized these funds during fiscal year 24 to ensure that we could offset some of the cost of our equity adjustment and to offset the cost of our outsourcing of our ESS services. We are going to increase special education funding a little bit because we still do have to utilize some of that money for the outside services that we do still provide. Transportation, you will see a small decrease. The decrease is due to the district being able to create smarter routes. And we also received a grant to help offset the cost and help us purchase some EV buses for the new fiscal year. K-3 reading program is going to see a decrease, and this is actually across the board and it's legislative. So unfortunately, we don't have any control over that one. And then DSEG will not see a decrease at all because we utilize our DSEG funds to operate Shaw Montessori and I know this, Magnet. We are also going to use some of those funds to help offset that cost that we will be taking for moving the YMCA into our before and after care program. As we move away from peer, we will be utilizing YMCA. And this using DSEG funds will help us because it will cover the cost for our families so that their kids won't see a cost for their kids to attend. We do realize as a district that this is a big number to see. A $9 million decrease is a big number to see, which is kind of what brings that urgency to our Phoenix Reimagine meetings that we've been having for the year. Our goal at this point is to now start looking at our programming and see what we can do to utilize our facilities a little bit differently and start creating more revenue generating programs here. Capital funds will see a small decrease. It's just a decrease in our reserves. We did have to utilize our unrestricted capital when we had the Herrera flood. The trust will end up reimbursing us for that cost, but we did have to front that money. And then adjacent ways isn't going to see a change. Adjacent ways can be utilized for very specific purposes, such as creating safer sidewalks, fences for our schools. Our classroom site fund will see an increase, and we are going to be utilizing this cost to help mitigate the equity adjustment that we gave to our certified staff. And then finally, our special projects funds. We do see a small decrease in federal grants. This is due again to some legislation that went through. Our other funds will see an increase, and other funds are more classified as our cash generating funds. So that includes our civic center funds for rentals. It includes student activity funds, and fees. And then finally, it's food service fund. We didn't anticipate an increase or decrease in that right now because we did apply for and receive a grant that will help students with breakfast and lunch. I just don't have those total numbers yet. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. We'll see you later. All right, we're moving on to our current event summary, superintendent's report.
Good evening, governing board members, Madam President, our cabinet members, and our community. We hope everyone had a wonderful, safe 4th of July holiday. July marks the return of our teachers to the new academic year, and we're looking forward to welcoming all our new staff during the new Teacher Support Week, July 22nd. This week is going to include an historic tour of our district with Mayor Gallegos' official City of Phoenix historian, Steve Schumacher, as well as time with school leaders, our curriculum team, and an opportunity to get to know content materials as well as research practices for delivering the content. On the evening of July 30th and July 29th for Shaw Elementary, we are looking forward to welcoming our families and our students back to our schools. Our back to school night is going to feature a variety of fun events at our different campuses to welcome families and students, including some DBACs passing out backpacks at some of our schools, and a chance for all of our students to meet their teachers, visit their classrooms, and see their friends from school. We also have YMCA's Come See event to allow parents and family members to check out the new spaces for our before and after school programs. These events are from 4 to 6 p.m. And before that, we have a week of events planned, including immunization from our firefighters, free haircuts, a back-to-school clothing drive at Grand Canyon University for students, all organized through our Family Engagement Center and our community partners. And we are looking forward to celebrating our back-to-school rally on July 31st, where we're going to be celebrating what makes Phoenix #1 great, our people. We have 40 inspirations that we will be celebrating that morning, and on August 16th, 3 of those inspirations will be named as the top 24 inspirations at our Night of Inspiration event. As we move forward and we think about the July 4th holiday, one of the cornerstones of our democracy is an educated citizenry who's ready to participate fully in their civic responsibility as a citizen of the United States. In fact, today we found a code of professional ethics from 1957 from the NEA and the Arizona Education Association that states, and I think this is really important for us, we hold these truths to be self-evident that the primary purpose of education in the U.S. is to develop citizens who will safeguard, strengthen, and improve the democracy obtained through a representative government. And that the achievement of effective democracy in all aspects of American life and maintenance of our national ideals depend upon making acceptable educational opportunities available to all. We take this incredibly seriously as part of the responsibility of our district. And so that's part of why we attend to our governing board student outcome goals. Tonight, we will be reporting on 2 of these goals, Goals 2 and Goal 5, which are our goals set for early mathematics and middle years mathematics. We present this data in the public meeting because we want to hold ourselves accountable to meeting the targets that have been set, but also because we want our communities to know what we are doing and to enlist their support in helping us to meet those goals. And tonight, I want to take a moment to thank some of the community partners who are continuing to make a difference with our students across the district and partnering, and to make sure that our students and their families have what they need to succeed. Special thank you to our Phoenix One Foundation, Valley of the Sun United, or Valley of the Sun YMCA, G Road, Southwest Behavioral Health, Teach for America, Back to School, Mountain Park Health, and the International Rescue Committee, who are all helping work with us to make sure that our students are starting school with everything they need. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have any board member reports? I do not have any either. Moving on to student outcome focused governance. Here is our grounding on our student outcome focused update. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Or said differently, when placed in the context of governing, patterns of behavior that are exhibited in the boardroom can reasonably be expected to be found paralleled in the classroom. This concept, which offers a summation of the current literature on board behaviors and their relationship to improving student outcomes, is as simple as it can be confounding. The intention of the governance framework is to translate existing research and the collective experience of dozens of board members and superintendents into a set of tools that boards can use to identify what's working and what's not working, as well as to track progress along their journey towards improving student outcomes. The framework is built around 6 research-informed competencies that describe school board behaviors and the degree to which they create the conditions for improvements in the student outcomes. The vision and goals is the responsibility of the board to carry out the vision of the community. School systems exist for one reason: to increase what students know and are able to do, to provide students with knowledge and skills, and to improve student outcomes. Values and guardrails. In governing, board members represent the vision and values of the community, and they rely on the superintendent to determine how to accomplish the vision while honoring the values. Monitoring and accountability. Boards may adopt goals, but the effective use of time monitoring the goals are a skill the board needs to develop in order to hold the educational system accountable. Communication and collaboration. The board will lead with transparency and include stakeholders in the pursuit of the goals. Unity and trust. The board will lead with one voice in its pursuit of the goals. And last, the continuous improvement. The board must be dedicated to the cycle of continuous improvement by paying attention to what's working and what's not working. And here are our board goals. We have adopted 5. Our first 2 are around our early childhood literacy and mathematics, 3rd grade. Our 3rd goal is for our English language learners, and our last 2 goals are focused on middle school mathematics and reading. We also have some superintendent guardrails. Guardrails help give the superintendent freedom to do their job. Guardrails offer the right balance of guidance and freedom to support the work while always maintaining student outcomes in focus. And we also have some board guardrails that the board also abides to. And lastly, this evening, admin will be presenting the progress monitoring report on goals number 2 and number 5, and superintendent guardrail number 4. Okay, passing it on to presentation of board goal number 2.
Thank you, Madam President. So our goal number 2 is that we are going to have the percent of 3rd grade students with a pass rate on math as per the Arizona Assessment of Academic Standards that will increase from 29% on August of 2023 to 54% by August of 2028. This is the 5-year goal that the board has set for us. And here you can see this is where we started and the projection that we had. You can see that we also indicated particular targets that we had for each of our subgroups, both our demographic groups and the groups that receive federal program supports. And here are our final outcomes for this goal. And you can see we did not hit the target. You saw on the previous slide that we said we were not on track to hit it. And in fact, we stayed at 29%, missing our mark of 34%. One of the other things, I'm sorry. One of the other things you're going to notice in this is that we do have a couple little celebrations. Our English language learners were within 1% of hitting the target for their grade level. Our exceptional students went up to 9%, but did not make the 14% target. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Our free and reduced lunch numbers were higher, going up to 26%. Multiracial and Hispanic also went up very close to hitting their targets. This is important because those represent our largest populations as we're looking at this grade level. And so we're celebrating the fact that they made growth. However, we know that, and going back to the statement that we said before, it's acceptable educational opportunities for all. So we do have groups of students for whom we're not making the growth that we need. And that leads to President Bueno's next question. What is not, or this is question 1 from President Bueno, what is not working for our Caucasian students? And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Galetti to talk to us a little bit about this.
Hello, President Bueno, Vice President Trujillo, members of the board and cabinet. Can we go to the question real quick? So in looking at this question, what is not working for our Caucasian students? In talking with Dr. Lloyd about this one specifically, it's important to keep in mind with this, that this is a relatively small subgroup at this particular grade level. So any changes to numbers in that subgroup, for example, moving to, if we had passing students that might have moved just even a few to another, transferred to another district, might make a significant impact to that percentage. However, that being said, our data does show that only 27% of our Caucasian students showed that needed level of mastery. In looking deeper at that data with Dr. Lloyd, we did see that the numbers the biggest deficiency areas were operations and algebraic thinking and numbers in base 10. Why that is significant is in 3rd grade, that does account for 50% of the test at that grade level. So what that tells us is that our students still don't have the number sense and real deep understanding of how to do calculations, basic calculations with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division to be successful. So as we had previously identified, we really do need to support our students, all of our students, with more of that hands-on learning approach so that they're able to touch and feel things and manipulate things. So what we are going to be doing is working with our teachers to help support them in teaching with small group instruction. So to help our students to move from that, progress from the concrete to those more abstract types of mathematics. We also know that our students need more practice with mathematical thinking and problem solving in general, not just the rote memorization of facts and that type of thing, but really learning how to take that math that they're learning and then apply it in some real world kind of a way. So really providing more of a hands-on tier 1 instructional approach is what we think is going to be helpful for our students so that they're able to not just say repeating a concept or repeating a fact about math, but also knowing what that looks like, understanding what a particular number represents and how numbers work together in those ways. So providing that hands-on tier 1 learning experience in math and intervention that really does focus on differentiated small group instruction is going to be a focus for us this coming year. So while we do have MyPath, which is a computer-based program, it does provide that personalized learning for our students. It gives them what they need and that skill level that they need. It doesn't always necessarily match with the skills, the standards, and the concepts that the teacher is teaching at that grade level at that time. So that is where the small group instruction can really help as well, because this teacher can pull that small group in, work with them on those grade level standards and those grade level concepts, and then we can look at that MyPath, providing support to our students at the individualized place where they might need it at another time, at another intervention time. So this year, what we're really going to be focusing on is that small group instruction, using those math manipulatives to support that grade level learning. We're going to be collecting, our teachers are going to be collecting and tracking evidence of their student learning to develop their lesson plans and to make any adjustments with their instruction. And then again, utilizing that MyPath outside of the tier 1 time so that we're really focused on those grade level standards and concepts during that tier 1 time and providing that individualized support at another intervention time so that they're getting both of those pieces addressed.
Thank you, Dr. Galetti. And I just want to go ahead and add, as Dr. Galetti had pointed out, the sample size for this particular group, if you saw on the previous slide, it's 26 kids. That's the size that we're looking at. So both as to what she said before in terms of 1 or 2 kids really makes a huge difference. We come back to this. We come back to this rationale. I believe we've spoken to this before about 1 or 2 kids should always make a difference for us. And I would be remiss to say Dr. Lloyd is on a very well-deserved vacation right now, but he would also be emphasizing the importance of student goal setting in this particular context, right? Because we really want to make sure that those students, as well as their teacher, are aware of how they're doing. Yes, it's 26 students, but those students being aware of where their current level is at and how these assessments continually track their performance, that makes a difference for every single one of those students. So it allows us to go into these smaller subgroups of students, right? These 26 kids, and make sure that they're paying attention. And by intentionality, the teacher is also aware of the growth or lack of growth that those students are doing. So I know Dr. Lloyd would definitely want to emphasize that point, and I try and channel his genius whenever possible.
And I will add that the use of student goal setting and having students monitor their own growth is a great research-based practice, that there are years and years of research behind that. And so as we look at the next slide, you can see that this is our information that we have as we look at each of the school sites. And I'm going to have Dr. Elshire talk about that for us.
And we'll talk a little bit more about how this data informs sort of the focus school rationale that we'll talk a little bit. But I just want to also point out that while, yes, we did not hit our goal, I want to emphasize some of the celebrations that you can also see on here. There's some incredible gains made by several of our leaders at campuses such as Emerson, Herrera, Kenilworth, Magnet, Shaw. Some of these leaders came and spoke at different points during the course of this year to this board about the work that they're doing behind the scenes to really emphasize whether it's coaching or student goal setting. So there's a lot to be successful for, but obviously there's a lot of work to be done. We're going to be talking as Dr. Galetti talked about in terms of what needs more attention in terms of that tier 1 instruction, the real intentional training and coaching around differentiation, small group instruction, and hands-on learning. These are all key facets that we're going to be looking at in our math instruction. And then I think we have a couple questions later on in terms of how that English language development, how that is used to support instruction. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And then again, the work that we're doing to really do the whole child approach of working with the families to understand the complexity of the math that these kids are getting themselves into. This is goal number 2. So we're talking about 3rd grade mathematics, which has extraordinarily difficult concepts and difficult vocabulary. I've worked through 3rd grade math and it's not easy. It wasn't easy then, it isn't easy now. So that being said, being able to engage our families as first teachers to be able to do that. And again, so many great questions in our presentation today. So I'll talk a little bit more about developing testing familiarity, which actually comes as the next question from President Bueno, which was under what needs more attention, how will the strategy developing testing familiarity be executed? This is something that we are very passionate about in the C&I department. There was a phrase, I'm dating myself a little bit, but just as I was becoming a principal, we were moving into online testing. And the tests that our students were encountering, taking them online, were so dramatically different from what they were being exposed to in the classroom. We saw dramatic dips in our mathematics scores. So let me give you an example. So we developed a procedure where we said, we don't want the tools to get in the way of them showing learning. So when you have a student doing visual comparisons on a computer screen, if you have not given them examples of what that looks like or how to navigate the tools that are on those electronic tests, they might know the content, but they don't know how to navigate the tools, whether it's graphing or comparing sizes, utilizing number lines. There's all these tools that are available in these online testing resources that our students must be able to know, identify, and navigate in order to really be able to use the learning. So it's two very different types. So we're very excited this year. Dr. Lloyd, along with our IEISs, are going to be really emphasizing the use of a program called TestNav. I believe that's, TestNav. And it's a student readiness tool, which really gives students the exposure to what the AASA looks like online in comparison to what maybe it looks like in their textbooks, right? So what they're getting out of their lessons and what they're getting out of their small group instruction, it's great that we're using manipulatives, right? But how does that language of, or that skill of using manipulatives and using that hands-on, how does that then translate to going on my computer and using that graphing tool? Or how does that utilize my ability to drag and drop different things, right? So these are all things that our students have to have the ability to do, that if we don't expose them to that, gets in the way of their learning. It is an impediment to them showing that they actually know the content. So this will be something that we're really working on this year with our students. It's something that we're always very attentive and focused on, because it's a new tool, and it's oftentimes a changing tool. They'll change whole aspects of it on one assessment to another year after year. So we'll be working on that.
And one thing that I would add is it's also helping students become familiar with the types of questions they're going to encounter on the assessment. So in addition to understanding how the technology works, it's understanding what the question asks and then teaching them the test-taking strategies of being able to eliminate responses that are not appropriate and being able to make appropriate estimates and then checking, does my estimate match? Those are test-taking strategies that help you at all levels of education as you're preparing for different levels of education and taking different assessments. So we want to make sure that our students have that same advantage in being able to understand how to address and take tests with a strategic lens toward being able to show what you know. And so our next question, or our next feature, is also looking at our focus schools. And I'm going to turn this over again to Dr. Elshire.
So as you'll see here, we have now developed sort of goals to make sure that the schools that need the most dramatic amount of support are being identified and given that level of support, right? And so you'll see Dunbar, Emerson, and Lowell. Those are schools that were identified because those are schools that have, over the past 2 years, consistently identified that this is an area of challenge, an area of focus for them. So we really want to make sure that we're being intentional, that there is clear goals for these schools and attainable goals for these schools. And again, so the focus initiatives, or those inputs that we're looking at for these schools specifically, is really focused math foundations training for the first and second grade teachers that are going to help influence that. The use of English language development coaching, which was a wonderful question that's asked just here in a minute about how that impacts both the focus schools, but also just how those scaffolding and PSYOP strategies work overall, which we'll talk about. And then again, those family math events to support families with the math strategies at homes. These are all going to be different inputs that we're going to be looking, as well as just continually helping the leaders and the teachers on these campuses really monitor this particular goal on their site of how effective, not, and again, I want to make sure that we're clear on this, not just how are they doing in K2, right? We want to make sure that that is an indicator. K2 is just an indicator of overall, and grades K through 8, how are we doing in that math instruction? So it's not keeping our eye off the ball for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? It's if what is working with K2, if we know that is working, how do we then take those strategies? How do we take those tools? How do we take those resources and matriculate them up so that it's actually serving all of our students? We're really trying to be intentional in that. Which I believe leads to one of our other questions, which is under the focus initiatives, how will the strategy for district-funded English language development assist specifically with math? We know that math is a unique language, right? And there's a couple ways that that comes very true for our students that are emerging bilinguals. One is their exposure to vocabulary. There is very different types of vocabulary that are not everyday use for our students that are in these programs that are emerging bilinguals. PSYOP strategies really emphasize the use of being explicit and in teaching academic vocabulary. So when we're talking about things like integers, number lines, negative numbers, these are not words that we use in a daily basis, let alone a third grade student who is mastering the English language. So a STIOP strategy of making sure that teachers are very explicit in their use of vocabulary, that is a SIOP strategy, making sure that we are very explicit of what that looks like. But that requires coaching and it requires real intentional planning, right? You have to be able to look at the lesson ahead of time and say, okay, this is a lesson on integers. What are the key vocabulary that our students are going to need to know? That's part of a SIOP lesson template and that our teachers will be coached on and be able to use. Another SIOP strategy that is fundamentally important is the use of modeling and scaffolding, right? So you want to, as the person who is modeling the English language in the classroom, you want to be modeling step by step how to work through a problem. That is really beneficial for an emerging bilingual student, but again, very beneficial for every student in that classroom to have a clear model of step by step breaking that down. But it's proven time and time again from a research standpoint to be helping students with who are learning the language. Last but not least, another example would be the use of discussion. Research is clear that for an emerging bilingual student to be used to adopt a word, they have to use it at least 15 times. So if I am presenting content to you and I'm saying, okay, this is an integer, this is a fraction, then we go, and I'm the only one using that word, no one else is using that word, that's not going to stick with the student. So one of the high priority items in a SIOP model that we need to be coaching on is how to embed that conversation, how to embed that discussion into the classroom environment, because that's the only way any of those students are going to be using those words so that the meaning really, really sticks. In addition to that, by providing providing discussion time, you also provide processing time and pacing. These are other key aspects of a SIOP model that are really, really important. You have to have appropriate pacing. You can't be moving too fast. And you have to provide time for processing. Our active language, our active conversation, that is us processing together. So those are some examples, and there's plenty of others of how these SIOP strategies really work themselves into math instruction. And these are coaching strategies. These are all things that come from, I'm only speaking to this because I've gone through SIOP and I talked to Mary Lou and I talked to these individuals who are incredibly brilliant in these areas. And so that's the kind of knowledge that we're fortunate enough to have in this district that we're going to be working to coach directly into these schools and bring out district-wide. Did I miss anything? Sure. All right.
And so as we look, excuse me, at our next question from Vice President Trujillo, how will the strategy of focus schools support growth for all of our schools? How will focus schools influence different levels of growth based on what we have seen going on at schools? And I think this is an important question and an important demarcation for us to make. The focus schools have been selected because, as Dr. Elshire shared, they are performing below the district rate of growth. And so we know that we need to choose a way to intervene with those schools and provide a different level of resources to those schools to help support the students. At the same time, we're not changing what we're doing with our other schools in terms of making sure that everyone is getting the support that they need to get the growth that we want to continue seeing. So when we think about the focus schools in particular, we've identified the focus of having, I keep saying focus, we've identified a strategy of being able to make sure that our teachers at the focus schools are getting a lot of specialized coaching in the math strategies instruction. And so helping them to understand, as Dr. Galetti was talking, how do you make small groups? How do you purposefully pull students together and give them the instruction they need? How are you using goal setting as a strategy to help students set goals for themselves? And then also looking at our English language acquisition strategies. How are we using those strategies embedded in our math teaching so that our students are getting just what they need? Not only at focus schools, this is an emphasis that we want to have at all of our schools, but our focus schools are going to get extra attention in implementing that and in tracking how their students are doing in those areas. And of course, the other part of this in our theory of action of how we're going to help our schools is engaging our families. As I shared in my earlier superintendent reports, this really is a everyone's on deck effort to help improve our school performances. And when we do include our families and help our families see their role as their child's first teacher, we get better results. So those are the ways in which we're really going to work on supporting that growth, but also making sure that we are continuing the work at all of our schools, but with extra allocation of resources to those focus schools, because the growth they need to make is more intense than the growth other schools are needing to make at this time. So as you're looking at this, are there further questions about goal 2?
Madam Chair, I have a quick, small question. Can you remind me what SIOT model means, please?
See if I remember my adjectives. Structured instruction, what is it? Structure, immersion, observation protocol. Yes, structured immersion observation protocol, SIOP. So these are sort of the tried and true research-based strategies that have been found to be most effective for teaching students that are emerging bilinguals. And so and again, as we've talked about before, a lot of the research on it shows that it helps not only those students, but just as co-teaching helps, it's just as differentiation helps. These are strategies that help all students within the classroom, whether it's scaffolding, modeling, vocabulary. These are really tried and true strategies, but they are designed most effectively to support students learning the language and being able to use the language.
And I'll just add to that, I think one of the nice things about this is that it is an observational protocol. So there are behaviors we can observe teachers using in the classroom. So we can observe the frequency with which those behaviors are being practiced. And we can also watch then when the teacher is using the strategy, what are the reactions from our students as the teachers are using those, so that we can start to track. As teachers are using this, do we see students paying more attention and nodding that, oh yes, I get this, or taking notes? And are they then applying this in their real life? So the observational protocols are a really nice tool for us.
Do you have any questions, Ms. De La Rosa?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering all our questions. I'm moving on to D3, approval of student outcome focused governance progress monitoring report of board goal number 2. I motion that we adopt the monitoring report.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo, I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to discussion on board goal number 5.
Thank you, Madam President. So board goal 5 is our middle year's mathematics goal, and this is measured with the percent of 8th grade students who are increasing their pass rate on the AASA from 13% in August of 2023 to 38% by August of 2028. And so again, you can see this is the goal that we set, and our target goal for this year was 18. So moving from the 13% in 2023 to 18% this year. And if you look at our next goal, again, we had predicted we would not be on target to hit that. And unfortunately, our prediction was accurate. So you can see that we are at 16%. We did go up, but we are 2 points shy of hitting that mark. And again, as we discussed earlier, you can see different groups where students are making progress, but not quite to the mark. So again, our African-American students, and we celebrated the African-American students hitting their reading target in our last presentation. They're very close to hitting their math target, but not quite as high as we would like to see. And again, our white students are showing growth, but not as high as we would like. And then our Hispanic students showing the closest to getting to their target, and that's our largest group of students, but not quite there yet. So as we look at the next slide, We have a question under our plans for focus. What does co-teaching instruction and what does that strategy look like? And so we're actually going to ask Alicia Zelvis, our Director of Exceptional Student Services, to talk a little bit more about this because this is her work and it's really exciting.
Good evening, Governing Board, Trujillo, esteemed members of the board, cabinet, and our community members. I'm Alicia Zelvis, Director of Exceptional Student Services. I am very passionate about co-teaching and inclusive models for students with disabilities, but that's not really why I'm here. We want to make sure it's an important skill and activity that is improving growth in our classrooms. I'm a trainer in co-teaching and have been for about 10 years now. So I was delighted last year when I was allowed to take on this project and start our first cohort in Phoenix. Last year, we were able to provide 11 hours of direct training to 7 schools that participated in the co-teaching cohort. This training included introduction to the models because co-teaching isn't just 2 teachers taking turns teaching. There's a multitude of models and different ways you can approach it. And it all just depends on the culture of the classroom, sometimes the content that's being delivered, and sometimes it's not just about adopting one model, it's about multiple different ways, depending on the information that needs to be delivered for the day. So they learned about the models and a lot on team building because co-teaching can be like a marriage and you may not know that person very well until you're cozied up in the same room together. And then specially designed instruction, which is that very magical type of instruction that comes from the certified special ed teacher. But in the state of Arizona, general education teachers are allowed to also deliver specially designed instruction. So in these trainings, I wanted to mention, it's not just the ESS teacher that attends. They attend with a partnering general ed teacher. So they're both going through the same thing together. They learned about specially designed instruction for behavior and classroom management, but then really getting into more social emotional learning and higher needs in the classroom. They also learned about conflict resolution. Again, a marriage. They're not always perfect. And so we have to learn how to be a good partnership and have good conversations with each other and be on the same page about how we treat our children. And they monitored, identified data and progress monitored on the student growth targets for their specific groups. And then we had a data reflection at the end. So this was 11 hours of direct training. I also provided walkthrough feedback in the classrooms to look at their interactions, give them feedback on how much I could observe as far as accommodations, modifications, differentiation, small group instruction, and then additional paid planning time that they received weekly, because as we know, our teachers just never have enough time to prepare everything they need to. And so to get 2 people together to connect and talk about one group of students, I allowed them additional planning time that we paid for after school once a week. And then they would submit that information to me for my review and feedback as well. This year, we are going to start our second cohort. It consists of 13 hours of training, and that starts next week. We are still enrolling staff for that. I'm sure as people are coming back from vacations, we'll have a few more, but we do have 4 members signed up already. And I just kind of wanted to give you a brief description. So co-teaching is a collaborative approach where 2 teachers work together to plan and implement instruction in an inclusive classroom. So looking at data a couple years ago, we saw what's different about certain classrooms and certain schools with our students with disabilities that in their growth. Generally the students that are not leaving the classroom for services are students that are making the most growth because they're not losing time and instruction of the general content being pulled to do remedial things. They need both, but those can be delivered in the classroom at the same time. Same way we talk about accelerated learning. I just wanted to give you a couple anecdotal feedback things that from our co-teachers from last year. The co-teachers reported that this strategy increased their ability to collaborate and plan how to support all student needs. That's from the general ed teacher and the special ed teacher. Co-teachers reported participation in the program helps teachers gain confidence in subject matter and communication skills. So when we talk about an ESS teacher, when I went to school to learn about special education, become certified, I got very little on content delivery because my job is specially designed instruction. I know all the tricks and the strategies. I had to learn from a reading specialist how to teach reading once I started because they give you very minimal content classes in college to learn how to also deliver instruction for everyone. So having two together, you're learning how to deliver the content that the general ed teacher learns, and the general ed teacher is learning how to do more of those tricks and specially designed opportunities. And then a co-teacher reported that as her students were witnessing the ESS teacher helping students with disabilities in her classroom, she noticed that the other students were inspired in her classroom to work harder and show more performance like their peers because they had a special activity they were doing and everyone wanted to do it and they knew if they got their work done or if they mastered the skill, they'd also be able to do the skill that was special. So those are just some reports of what we do in co-teaching. Did you have any other questions?
No, but thank you so much for being able to walk me through exactly what the strategy looks like. And it really sounds like a wonderful strategy. So thank you for leading that.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. If there's any other examples I can provide, please let me know. I'm happy to.
Thank you.
It's just another really incredible opportunity that we've got. We keep coming to this theme, right? That we've got the right people in the right places doing the right training and the coaching and being able to bring these really important strategies, and we're doing it in-house. So it's very, very exciting. So as we look at to the next slide here, which is sort of identifying where our schools kind of fall on the spectrum, we see some areas, again, of incredible growth and success. I'm incredibly proud of the work that was done by our leaders over at Edison, Magnet, Shaw. Yeah, there. So we know that there is possibilities and strategies that are happening on our campuses right now that are very, very effective, such as the real intrinsic use or explicit use of pre and post tests to help students and teachers set goals. We talked about that earlier. The engaging learning through small groups and hands-on instructions and manipulatives and targeting instruction and strategic tutoring. That, again, requires us to know our students and know what skill sets that they essentially need. In addition, what needs more attention, very similar to some of the conversations that we've had around our third grade scores, is, again, that emphasis on tier 1 instruction, the use of manipulatives, the use of coaching, whether it's in our master teachers or our EL interventionists to support family engagement strategies to support math fluency, and again, developing that familiarity with testing. One emphasis that we do know to be true with Edison is this was a campus that really engaged in the explicit use of ELD instruction and really worked to train all of their faculty in English language development instruction. They really did, I can't remember, it's QTEL, and I don't want to mess up like I just messed up SIOP, but the QTEL strategies, which they engaged all of their campus in, regardless of what their demographics in their classroom look like. This was really intentional learning because we know Edison has really embased itself as a multicultural campus, and because it's in phenomenal growth. So we know and we see as our own best researchers, some of the things that are being done on our campuses by our leaders that are truly having an impact. And those are the things that with this focus school initiatives, we hope to continue to replicate.
And the QTEL model comes from WestEd. So another research-based model, it's the quality teaching of English language acquisition strategies.
You know all the acronyms. It's really impressive.
I make quality teaching of English language. And so it's a research-based model from the WestEd Education Labs, really looking at what are those strategies. So when we go back to, and they're the same strategies that you see in the observational protocol for SIAP. So all of these SIOP, I should be careful because we also have school improvement acceleration plans, which are SIAP. So The more we can say the words instead of the acronyms, the better. But we're really excited about this work, and it leads to our next question from President Bueno. What are the adult behaviors we need to monitor for the area of focus, both at the focus schools and for the rest of the district? And I think this is an important question because it goes back to the framework of the student outcomes focused governance, that student outcomes don't change unless adult behaviors change. And that starts with me. It starts with our governing board members. It starts with our members of cabinet. Every adult in our system has to own that we need to make changes in order to get those outcomes. And so in the monitoring of behaviors, it starts with what are we doing? And in fact, we just spent as a cabinet the last 2 days really looking at our outcomes and what we're going to do to help address how we better support the focus schools and all of our schools through following our guardrails, but also really thinking about what are the ways in which we hold ourselves accountable and make sure that every position in our district sees their part in helping to create the kinds of learning environments where every student can succeed. In addition to that, we've talked a lot about the observational protocols, and you heard Ms. Elvis talk about how she is monitoring classrooms by doing walkthroughs and observing what the teachers are doing, giving feedback. You heard Dr. Galetti talk about walking in and using the protocols to observe how are teachers teaching, and are we teaching them how to use small group instruction effectively, and giving them the tools and making sure that they're using the tools of math manipulatives effectively. And so it's that observation and feedback. We can't just go observe and walk out and go, she did a great job. How did she do a great job? Give specific feedback that tells me what I did well so that I can replicate that again. Or conversely, if I'm not doing something well, give me a coaching opportunity as quickly as possible, because we know, again, the research says specific immediate feedback is the best way to change behavior. So if I'm not doing something well, don't do it in a way that humiliates me in front of students, but take me aside and say, can I show you this? And let's talk about how this works, and model it with me, with students, so that I can see that. The role of our master teachers and our learning acceleration specialists is one way that we're helping to make sure we're doing this. So in all of these practices, we're trying to make sure that we have adults throughout the system that are not only monitoring their own behaviors, but are helping to coach and monitor that what we are asking people to do across the system is actually being done, and being done with fidelity to the research we're using when we talk about our theories of action. So this comes back to everything that we've been talking about. And so you hear us talk about a theory of action. When we talk about the theory of action, it's really, those are those inputs that we're going to put into helping to reach the goals that we have, our outcomes. And so those inputs are the coaching with teachers, making sure that we're using a district funded support to make sure that we've got our English language development coaching going on. And then again, including our families as first teachers. That doesn't just happen at the early grades. It does traditionally, but we know that parent support is critically important all the way through, and perhaps more so in the middle years, because those children are going through an incredible developmental change, and having a parent who's listening, observing, and attending makes a huge difference for them. So all of this continues, and you're going to see that we're trying to get really strategic in the way that we're doing this, so that our initiatives are thorough and are coherent from the early years all the way through the time that they are leaving us and heading off to their high school situations. Then Dr. Ailshire has more to add to this.
So this leads us to the work of the question from President Trujillo, what are some of the evidence-based research examples used when developing the area of focus, what's working, what needs attention, and the new interim goals and focus areas.
And I got excited and started talking a lot about this. But Dr. Hailshire will continue.
No, you're. So Dr. Gonzalez talked a lot about our theory of action and the ways in which everything that we're doing right now in terms of the work of the student outcomes focused governance needs to be based on what's best research practices and what those are. And so I want to emphasize some of the things that we've already talked about in terms of some of the work that's being done by Maria Padres at West Ed or Joyce Epstein at Johns Hopkins. These are the researchers that are grounding the work that we're moving towards and embedding the work that, for example, that Ms. Zelvis was pointed out in the co-teaching model. These are research-based strategies that we are continually looking at and looking at our own role as our best own researchers on how that is implemented. The QTEL model, for example, that we were utilizing over at Edison, that is a research-based model that we are now finding that is being held highly effective and being able to make sure that that is being trained throughout that faculty, but knowing that the emerging bilingual population is only growing in our district. It is one of our larger sample sizes, as you saw. That needs to be a model that if we find it to be effective at a focus school, we as our own best researchers need to take that and be able to apply those skills elsewhere. And so those are going to be models that we continue to build on, as well as research done by outside resources as well.
And speaking of QTEL, we actually had 40 of our teachers go through training earlier this spring to go through so they have that to put in place in their schools next year. So all of these going back to that notion of we are our own best researchers. As a school is showing that something is working, we want to find ways to replicate that. And so when Mr. Fuentes came to us and said, I really want to do this model with my team. I've talked with our Mrs. Gonzalez, our coordinator of language acquisition services, and she agrees this is a good research-based model. Can we try this? Yes, let's try this. Let's monitor this. As we're monitoring it and you're seeing in the results that it's working for our students, okay, how do we replicate this? Our close monitoring of our data throughout the year helped us to understand that this was a model that was showing growth and gains. And so that's why we brought the trainers in to make sure that we're giving this to even more of our teachers. Every time we find something that works, we have to find a way to replicate it and give other people the opportunity to bring this to their schools, into their classrooms, so that we can continue to see this practice unfold across our district. We're also excited about the cohort that we're developing with our leaders across the district, teacher leaders, instructional leaders, principals. We're going to be developing a doctoral cohort again, coming back to and testing all of these different theories that we're putting into play and using those as a doctoral dissertation of action research to see when I apply these strategies, what is the outcome that I get? And so we're actually going to be able to see on a larger scale different strategies that work in urban education so that we truly can become a national exemplar of best practices in urban education to get outstanding results for every child.
Do you have any questions? Ms. De La Rosa, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering our questions. And I'm moving to a motion that we approve the student outcome focused governance progress monitoring report of board goal number 5.
While super excited about this growth I'm looking at, Carmen Trujillo here, I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have adopted our monitoring report for board goal number 5, and we are moving on to discussion on superintendent guardrail number 4.
Thank you, Madam President. Superintendent guardrail number 4 is the superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without a site budget process where resources are allocated equitably. And so if you look at the next slide, you actually see our theory of action being put into play here. The theory of action is that when sites have a budget and they are able to execute that budget to meet their needs, the outcomes are more focused on students and what the student needs are to respond. So our inputs were to create site budgets, believe it or not, prior to this guardrail. Our school sites and our divisions did not have their own budgets. Training was held for our school leaders on running and managing their budgets since they'd never had one. That was never an expectation that they had. And we provided training to the school leaders on what's allowable expenditures and fund sources that they can use to access their funds. We want to make sure that in giving budgets to people, they know how to use their budgets appropriately. So the outputs were that we anticipated that we would see site leaders increase in confidence, knowledge, and skill to manage the site budget, and that they would be able to shape budgets to meet the specific needs of their students to meet their academic achievement goals. And then the outcomes are that the student needs would drive the budgets and district allocations would be equitable based on the needs of the campus. So if you look at the next page, you can see the interim goal that was created, that by May of 2024, the district will increase from 0 out of 14 sites having a site budget in 22-23 to 14 out of 14 sites having an individual site budget during the 23-24 school year, as demonstrated by site leaders accessing and running budget reports from the general ledger. So Mr. Manley actually created the site budgets and then conducted a training at the very beginning of the year to show them. And then he would run the budget reports to make sure that people were in fact accessing their budgets monthly. He also went out and did one-on-one meetings with the principals to help them see how to run their budgets, and then also met with front office staff to help front office staff see how they can support that as well. So the outcome of this is that by 6/15/2023, business service leads training with all site leaders on the budget process, individual meetings with the CFO, follow up with site leaders, reviewing their chart of accounts and walking them through the process on 9/12/2023. Budgets included their maintenance and operations accounts, their capital funds, as well as cash accounts. And again, the cash accounts are things like their civic funds and student government fundraising sorts of things, tax credits. Expectation was to run the reports monthly at a minimum. And so Mr. Manley would run the report and he would report in our leadership weekly whether or not principals had been running their reports. And by the end of the year, everyone was meeting that goal. So we had 14 out of 14 sites that met this expectation.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, this is why this is a guardrail, because we know that we didn't have, the sites didn't have a budget, and that was very problematic. And so thank you and Mr. Manley for getting this all aligned. What was the last thing I was gonna say? I forgot. What do you have?
I was just gonna ask if it still goes on fluidly and that those come to you.
Yes, so we were talking about this today in our cabinet retreat. How do we, once we've hit a goal, how do we continue to maintain progress and move forward? So Ms. Mena is also planning to continue meeting with our principals and to continue to do this. She's actually taking them a little bit further in the development of these budgets as well. We're looking at using our Title I process for how we allocate based on poverty, based on assessment scores, based on the different needs that we have, how we can use different fund sources to allocate resources to meet different needs based on the same sort of formula that we use with our Title I funding. So it really does become a full equitable allocation of resources across the district. So a school that has a higher poverty rate or has greater needs because of students with exceptional students or higher numbers of refugee students coming in, that we're thinking about how do we allocate resources to make sure that we are recognizing the pull for those students at that campus and the resources that we need to supply to make sure that they're able to achieve. So those are the places that we're going next in this goal to continue to build on and make sure that we are not just meeting the baseline, but that we're continuing to strive to meeting it at a higher level annually.
Madam Chair, I have one more question. So what I'm, what what's sticking out to me is with student needs and things like that, with our end user in mind, do we ever, what does that voice look like? How do we know what the student needs are? Is it like a survey that the families get? Is it teachers? What does that part look like?
We have to be careful to stay within compliance with the USFR and our budgeting responsibilities. And so we have to come back always to looking at what is our primary purpose, and that is to make sure that our students are achieving the academic outcomes. So in doing that, we're very fortunate because we do have social workers at every one of our sites. We have incredible ESS staff, ELI, English language interventionists at our sites. People who are trained to be able to understand what students are needing and whether or not they're getting the resources that they need. So in our district, and this is unique in our district, having a social worker at every site who can respond to the breadth of needs that we have, our social workers are a great barometer. And along with our family and community engagement specialists to understand what are the requests that families are bringing, what are the things that we're seeing our students are presenting, so that we can respond to the social and emotional aspects of learning, but also never losing sight of the academic goals that we have to hit with our students. And so those are important allocations for us as a district that we want to make sure that we're putting into that. And then additionally, it's when we see high concentrations of need, how do we respond to that? This is also a critically important place for us to rely on our partners. So Southwest Behavioral Health is an example of a partner that we rely on. When we see that we have a great need, we can go to them and say, we need to work together on a grant to be able to respond to this need so that we're making sure that we're maximizing the resources that we have, but we're also taking advantage of partners who also have resources that can help support. The City of Phoenix is another great partner in this, and working very closely with the City of Phoenix Housing Development Group, making sure that we're always responding to the needs that we see in a collaborative way, because it doesn't end when school is over, it continues into the community. And the more we can work collaboratively, the better we're able to respond to those needs.
Thank you. I remember what I was going to say earlier. I just wanted to say thank you for using district funds for district mandates, because I know that's also kind of problematic when we put mandates on sites and take from their budget. So thank you. Any other questions around guardrail, superintendent guardrail number 4? Okay. Moving on to a motion that we approve the student outcome focused governance progress monitoring report of superintendent guardrail number 4.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are moving on to C8, which is a discussion on our board self guardrail number 4. Our board guardrail number 4 is, in attaining the board student outcome goals, the board shall not negate newly elected members from experiencing a quality onboarding process. In working on an onboarding process, on next agenda, we will have approved our board operating manual. So that's something that is that we're adopting in order to work towards that goal, guardrail, of making sure that newly elected school board members have a smooth process of onboarding. And so that's one thing that we're gonna work on, and we'll test it out when we get a new board member this year, hopefully. So yeah, that's the discussion on guardrail number 4. Any other further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're gonna move on to community communications. Do we have any virtually?
We do not have any virtually or in person.
Thank you. Nobody's here in person. Thank you. Moving on to approval of consent agenda. I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our action item. We have to approve our fiscal 24-25 budget. We were presented it earlier during public hearing. I motion that we adopt the fiscal year 24-25 budget as presented.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we have a budget to submit to the state. And in the meantime, we will go out and recruit 175 students to make sure we get some money back. And closing items, any board member requests?
I do have a request. I don't want to forget about this, so I want to bring it up now. Since we are, I know I've asked it before too, so remind me if we're already on top of this. But since we are meeting some of our interims and things like that, at what point do we create new ones? Do we kind of wait until a certain part of the year? I want to really understand that part of the process.
I can respond to that now. We actually met with AJ Craybill and our coach, Dr. Cinto Ramos yesterday as a cabinet. And once we hit our goals, we create new guardrails, or not new guardrails or new goals. We make new interim goals for each of those. So we are in that process of doing that currently. When we're showing you those focus schools and the initiatives that we're putting forward, those are going to be proposed to you in August with a new set of interim goals for both guardrails and for the goals that we have set. So we will propose those in August for your consideration.
Thank you for clearing that up now. I don't have anything further.
What about any future agenda items? Okay, hearing none. I motion that we conclude this meeting at 6:30.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion to adjourn.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next meeting is scheduled for August 6th, and we will start at 5:15 here at our district office. And I will see you all at open house.